This is Peter.
And this is Tom.
And you're listening to History Teachers Talking Podcasts. All right, this is Peter Zablocki and Thomas Reska, and welcome back to our podcast. Today we have a special guest with us, Mr. Dan Griswas. Dan, hello.
Yes, Mr.
Hello,
A-Push.
thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
So, Mr. Dan over here is our fellow history teacher, and he, I was told by Tom, does this lesson about forgotten presidents in his history class. Is that correct, Dan?
Oh, that's correct. You know, the Gilded Age is such a fun time, because it's so comparable to today.
It's so inspiring, yeah.
It is. It's actually the most boringest thing to teach to students. But when you go back as an adult and look at it, you're like, wow, it's really relevant today. So
Nice. So I guess that's our topic. Our topic today is going to be talking about forgotten presidents. Now, interesting, though, because when I think of forgotten presidents, the Gilded Age definitely is front and center. But there's also some, just doing research for this, I don't know if you guys found this, but there's some that go earlier, mid-1800s, that it doesn't necessarily just go Gilded Age. There's some presidents that are
the topic is not just Gilded Age we're talking about. We're talking about forgettable presidents.
Yes.
So that's kind of what we're going to be looking at. And there's a lot of them, like the Gilded Age.
But a lot of them are in the Gilded Age.
Yeah, a lot of them are. And the Gilded Age, obviously, we're talking about that's the late 19th century, right? That's what we're applying here. Under the glitter or the gilded surface of all the prosperity, right, was all those troubling issues, right? The poverty, unemployment, the corruption, the government was dominated by political machines, all that type of stuff is what you can see if you look this stuff up. But then there's a lot of presidents involved here, and they kind of just got swept through history. That's what if you looked up, why are they forgettable? A lot of times they say they just didn't really impact the country in a major important way. But you can also argue that they were presidents, so they could impact the country some way.
And just going back to what Peter said, the forgettable presidents, it's usually after a time, especially during the pre-modern era, where a strong-willed president like Jackson or Lincoln takes power, and then Congress comes back in afterwards and kind of cuts that power away. And that's
they're worried about the power, exactly. Yeah.
In between Jackson and Lincoln, you have it. I mean, in between really Lincoln and you can make an argument for McKinley or Roosevelt. That's when you have those gaps of not so much personality presidents, but more power in Congress.
No, I was going to say they're not these larger-than-life figures that you see with Teddy Roosevelt and after him, or today the presidency is looked at as you have to be charismatic. These guys, at least history says they're probably one of the most charismatic people. That's why they get kind of forgotten in the history books a little bit more.
But Dan brought up a good point. I think there's definitely a pattern here that oftentimes what we're seeing is specifically during Reconstruction when you have Congress taking over and taking center stage and kind of pushing the executive branch to the side, and you kind of get that vibe of forgotten presidencies because Congress is definitely asserting their power a little bit more. So good point. All right, you guys want to start some chronologically, or you want to just throw them out there? I mean, who are some of these forgotten presidents? It's kind of sad. A lot of people don't even know these people were presidents.
I mean, I think everyone's favorite, scandal-wise, has to be Grover Cleveland by far.
Yes.
2 non-consecutive terms. And then, of course, he marries his, kind of ward, kind of daughter, which is kind of weird at the time.
We talked about that on the podcast, didn't we, Pete?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's everyone's favorite scandal president, I guess. But, he has some integrity, of course. He was one of the more honest presidents of that era. Often he was credited for. So,
well, he also, he's got talk about scandalous. Some accounts, which by today's standards definitely kind of fit, that he actually raped somebody before he became president. And this was brought up as he's running for president. And the fact that this guy's still elected, that would never fly in 21st century. No question about it.
Well, yeah, I saw a lot of things I saw that was Cleveland was an idea. He was a reformer, but his reforms had anything to do with money and organizations. He didn't really concern himself with any of the social justices of what was going on, with the industrial workers and stuff like that, or any of the old problems with racial justice. He didn't care. During his time was when Geronimo surrendered, right?
Yep.
But also too, he is he believed in laissez-faire government to a T.
Yes.
Even, and sometimes it helped the people, sometimes it didn't help the people. But what eventually did him in was towards the end of his second term, where you had the abuses of businesses and you had the huge economic downturns, the panic of 1893, where they wanted government to be more involved. And ultimately, Cleveland absolutely refused because that was a job not given to the federal government.
Yeah. I think since we're talking about Grover Cleveland, though, there's a guy that was squeezed in right in there between those 2 presidencies that literally no one remembers. And that's Benjamin Harrison. We got to throw that in there. Which, by the way, just so you guys know, is the last president to have a beard. Did you guys know that? I didn't know that until I
Really?
started doing this research. Yeah,
That's life-changing knowledge right there, Pete.
life changing. Became president. In between those two terms, he's also the only grandchild of a president, William Henry Harrison, who actually also could make this list today. No question about it. He didn't, Harrison didn't really do anything to distinguish himself as president. And I don't even think he won popular vote from what I remember. But they said that he was so unlikable and so stern and like stoic that the media of the time referred to him as the White House iceberg. Like no charisma, no charm, just like, he was just there. Clearly, he even cut his kids out of his will. I don't know if you guys saw that. Like Benjamin Harrison was an interesting
That's a
dude.
nice guy. Well, he did have some things did happen during his presidency, though. That were like, he had 6 new states were admitted to the union when he was president.
Well, I guess.
I mean,
how much is that Benjamin Harrison though?
His administration passed the Sherman Antitrust Act, which outlawed monopolies.
Okay,
so that was a biggie. And then I saw the main thing was him though. They said the Treasury had too much money. Really? So what happened is a lot of the congressman appointees went on like a spending spree, and a lot of money was spent modernizing the Navy. But the problem was that also left the country in financial trouble. But then that's why he kind of didn't win re-election, and then Grover Cleveland comes back again.
When you did your research, did you find his grandpa on this list as well? Because I did.
I would say his grandpa's probably one of the not forgotten presidents because he's always that fun fact trivia that, he served a month and died.
True statement. Yes.
Yeah. Where yes, he did nothing. He's forgettable for all that. But when you talk about his war record against Tecumseh, like he's more, I would say, less forgettable than the other ones because he has other things going for him besides just being president.
But I guess so we could say his presidency, because it's like non-existent, is forgettable, right?
Yeah.
But as a man, historically, he's not necessarily. I agree with that. I concur with that. That's good. This was always interesting to me because you know how your parents always tell you like don't go outside, without a hat in the winter because you're gonna get sick, and like you try to explain to your parents like you don't get sick from the cold, you get sick from bacteria and other things. But this still is the narrative when it comes to this guy. You know what I mean? Like he gave the longest inaugural speech in history, which was like 2 hours. And basically, I mean, this is still a narrative. Everywhere I look, it's like he refused to wear warm clothing to protect the bitter cold. And then he dies from pneumonia, just a month after taking oath of office. It's interesting because, I mean, am I wrong? I mean, I don't think you get sick from the cold. Do you? I don't know. Maybe my mom was right all this time, and my dad, I don't know. But that is definitely.
You want to stay warm. It was raining too, right? Wasn't that the whole thing with him? So it's one of those things that's what like Dan was saying. That's what he's kind of remembered for, right? He gets sick and dies. That's his big, shortest term in office. Yeah, claim to fame.
Well, his successor, like John Tyler, gets pretty much he's forgotten too, just because he's forgotten by his own party during his actual presidency.
Yeah,
like everyone just forgets this guy pretty much exists.
Yeah. Well, because he ran as a Whig, but he wasn't a Whig. And then he becomes president. The Whig Party was all excited to actually have a president with Harrison. And then Harrison dies. And then they're like, uh-oh, the next guy up wasn't necessarily a Whig. And
also, too, the fun fact about Tyler, though, is he had to convince everybody that he should be president because the line of presidential succession wasn't really official yet.
Yep.
What's weird, too, is he actually, Tyler, didn't he died a Confederate, right? Didn't he join the Confederacy afterwards?
He did, and he's the one responsible for annexing Texas, too, which often gets credited to Polk.
Yes, he kind of drops that bomb for Polk to deal with, yeah.
He was actually a member of the House of Representatives, in the Confederacy. That's where he died.
Really?
So he died fighting against the United States. So a former president joins the Confederacy. Oh, my God. You think about that for a second. Wow.
And I remember what was the fun fact of thinking, like, one of his kids was, like, still alive, or one of his great or is still alive today. It's something crazy.
I think he passed away maybe like last year or a year.
He passed away. Yeah, we talked about. I think he passed away like 2 years ago or 3 years ago, which is insane. Like the way that it worked. Let's talk about Zachary Taylor because I would have him on this list. Would you guys have Zach Taylor on this list?
Zachary Taylor.
I mean, he wasn't even president. Yeah, as a president, absolutely. And then once again, as a historical figure, not so much. Like his name pops up for the Mexican War.
Absolutely.
And that's the thing. But as a president, like. A lot of people believe he would have been willing to end slavery. He might have tried to end slavery or start the Civil War earlier because he wasn't that enthusiastic supporter of it from when I researched at least.
Yeah.
And of course his death was led to fun too, whether he was poisoned by cherries, which wasn't true at all, I believe. But
yeah, well, didn't they actually exhumed
that was kind of the narrative, right? That was a narrative.
I'm almost
Yeah,
positive they exhumed him in the 90s to double check if he was poisoned or not. And he wasn't, by the way. They figured out he was not. But you're right. Yeah, he was definitely a moderate on the issue of slavery. And he owned slaves, but he was very moderate about it. And I mean, this is a guy that's least likely president. He was probably the least likely to become president of American history. I mean, he had no political background whatsoever. I mean, he was just a war hero. But at the end of the day, Americans love war heroes. If we really go down the line of presidents, that does seem to be the number one qualification. Also, they said that he chewed tobacco like crazy, and used to spit like tobacco juice all over the White House carpet, and the cleaning people hated it.
Yeah. Imagine as like a president just doing that, but that's what again. That was the time, you know. It's always crazy when you hear about all these like gross things that the presidents used to do. That could be a topic, Pete, that we do. Gross presidents. There's a couple.
Gross presidents.
No, if we do that, though, we're gonna get like the CIA or something's gonna come after us.
Yeah, CIA. Yeah, they listen to this. You know,
they might.
You never know. Let's not sell ourselves short here.
It probably gets flagged, I'm sure.
However, I think since we're kind of back there in the 1800s, and going back to something that Dan you said right at the beginning today, is this idea of following a strong president. I think Martin Van Buren. What do you think? What do you guys think? Would you put him here?
Yeah,
Trail of Tears. I mean, the guy. I mean, a lot of people forget the fact that he's the one that's technically directly responsible for the Trail of Tears. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Well, so most of the articles that I found listed him as like one of the first ones of these forgettable presidents. Well, yeah, they said he was the first truly. Time Magazine calls him the first truly forgettable president.
Really?
And they said he was done in by like that economic crisis brought on by the banks.
True.
His extravagant lifestyle made him an easy scapegoat for political opponents, right? Because he kind of like liked to live in like luxury and stuff like that.
And you had the depression. Well, yeah.
Yeah, he had all that stuff, and he was soundly defeated by William Henry Harrison in 1841. So it was kind of just like he was in there for a couple of years. He was, Jackson was popular. He was Jackson's hand-picked successor, right? And then he just kind of like he's not Jackson. He doesn't have that persona. He doesn't have that will to kind of like force his will on people like Jackson did. So Van Buren kind of gets like overlooked. They say just he nearly disappears from history.
I mean, he was a one-term president, and he did run for re-election. I don't know, Dan. What do you think?
Well, I mean, it goes back to what we said before. You're coming after a strong personality. Usually, the person after the strong-willed personality is going to be forgot regardless. As you said, he oversaw the Trail of Tears. But if you ask any, student or somebody, they'll blame it on Jackson, which it is his fault, granted. But like, he clearly could have done something. He clearly could have, made it not as harsh, kind of stopped it. But he just kind of got a bad person. He was a smart man. Probably, he created the modern political system, but he wasn't the right person for the job at the time.
Yeah, just because you're smart doesn't necessarily mean you can be president. Like it doesn't. Yeah, there's a lot of other factors in there. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's like, whatever figure you come after is a big deal. Like John Adams. John Adams comes after George Washington. His biggest problem was he wasn't George Washington. Yeah. And like, same thing with Martin Van Buren. He comes after Jackson. Everyone, loves Jackson or hates Jackson. He's just kind of like, he's there. And people don't want to have a boring president. They want an exciting president.
Yeah. We'll talk about boring presidents. And I don't know about boring or not, but I think these two guys always kind of pop up. One is Franklin Pierce, right?
Handsome Frank.
And the other one is Millard Fillmore.
Fillmore.
I feel like 1800s, apart from like some like all-stars in 1800s, it kind of just these guys, man, the 1800s were a rough time for presidents. I mean, what do you guys have for like Millard Fillmore? Like, I mean, obviously, Fugitive Slave Act, we're talking about the Compromise of 1850, which really kind of, I mean, that's a huge topic we all teach. And a lot of people forget the fact that it was Millard Fillmore that pushed that through. But I mean, besides that, what do you got? Do you have anything about Millard Fillmore?
Well, I mean, like, if you really look at his early story, he kind of like has parallels to like Lincoln, right? Because he was raised, he was born in a log cabin, right, in the frontier, and he was like slowly rising through the political machine, right, and eventually he becomes president. So he has a lot of that, but his presidency is pretty much forgettable ending, right?
And also, I mean, they say that he was so bad and so just ineffective that he actually was the last ever Whig president. Like, he was the end of the Whig experiment, I guess, in United States political history.
Yeah, so the only thing that he like united people with is that people united that they hated him.
Yeah,
sure.
Kind of sad.
that was pretty much what it was. Like, what he said, like slavery was a political matter, not a moral question.
We forgot to mention years for all these things. Fillmore was 1850 to 1853. FYI.
Yeah, he takes over for Taylor, right? Yeah,
Yep.
after Taylor dies.
Yeah, he does. And then Benjamin Harrison, by the way, was 1889 to 1893. William Henry Harrison was 1841, 1 month. Taylor was 1849 to 1850. I feel like we should have mentioned these. And Martin Van Buren was 1837 to 1841. All right, let's talk about Pierce. Do you guys have anything about Pierce?
Pierce has got a bum rap to start. I mean, like, who knows how he would have been? I mean, he's coming back from, he just gets elected president, so you'd feel pretty happy for the guy. But then he's coming back on a train with his wife and his kid, 11-year-old son. They get into a train accident. His son dies, and that pretty much devastates him for most of his presidency.
Yep, he becomes an alcoholic because of it, they say.
Yeah, right? He refuses to swear his oath of office in the Bible because God could not exist because of what happened to his son. So, like, I mean, that's a bad rap to start, and obviously he doesn't do much behind it. I mean, Kansas-Nebraska Act.
No, he's suffering from depression. I mean, that's obvious. That's what he'd be diagnosed with today. I mean, that's what it is.
Interesting. Then one other interesting caveat here is that when he ran for president, he was nominated by the Democratic Party, right? He was from the North, but he was pro-slavery, which is interesting, which kind of appealed to the Southerners, which is probably why he got the election, won the election. But he was opposed in the election by a Whig candidate, and his boss, General Winfield Scott, that used to be, he served directly under Winfield Scott in the Mexican-American War, which I thought was interesting. And they said Pierce won it based on his personality. I don't know. But I guess, like you said, like once he wins it, things kind of, go downhill. They say he pretty much retired to just take care of his wife because his wife was in such a bad depression. He didn't run for re-election. He actually moved to Europe. I think it said he moved to Europe or the Bahamas or both to take care of his grieving wife. He did oppose the Civil War, though, which is interesting.
Yeah, basically, like Dan was saying, the death of his son just was basically the death of him. Even though
swept the rug.
He was alive physically, mentally, and spiritually, he was done. Yeah, there was nothing.
And plus one of his closing lines, when his party doesn't renominate him, when he says, "There's nothing left to do but get drunk."
Man,
imagine a president saying that. Exactly. Like a president saying that. Crazy.
I mean, it's pretty crazy.
All right, so let's talk about some of these like gilded guys, the guys that follow Johnson, because I mean, Johnson came on some of these lists I was looking at, and I'm like, no, he's not. Like Andrew Johnson is by no means a forgotten president, so I'm just going to ignore any website whatsoever that was.
So there's a couple that I thought was like they might not be great presidents, but they're not forgotten presidents.
Like Ulysses Grant, was he? Well, maybe his presidency was forgetful. I mean,
yeah, but the guy's he's on money. Like he's not forgotten.
But he's not on money for being a president.
Yeah, he's on for being a general. Well, his presidency was scandalous.
Yeah,
a lot of people are looking back at Grant's presidency now and kind of saying, "Wow, this guy actually did do more than he gets credit for." He eradicated the Ku Klux Klan down south, civil rights. I mean, he did what he could for the civil rights down south. All that Reconstruction legislation he oversees, and he's pro it. He's very pro it. Remember, he gives up his, he sells his slaves, gets rid of them when he can, and he's a big kind of advocate for African Americans at that time, which is pretty much unheard of, getting those equal rights. But he doesn't do it. Kind of doesn't do enough to get the credit he deserves, I think, most of the time.
I mean, a lot of it stems also from the scandals in his presidency, which can't necessarily be tied to him, but I feel like that kind of gives him a bad rap. But again, I wouldn't say forgettable by any means. Like what did Chester A. Arthur do? I mean, I kind of feel bad because our friend Katie, who was on our podcast a few weeks ago, she loves Chester A. So, Katie, we like him too. We just don't know much about him. What do you guys have for Chester A.?
I mean, the Pendleton Act, that's really what his claim to fame would be, I mean, legislation-wise. But it's kind of thing he kind of had to do since his, former partner, Garfield, gets shot by an office seeker. So, and Pendleton Act, makes the civil service reforms.
Like what, the civil service jobs and everything, right?
And they said they said before his presidency, he was, as a lawyer, he definitely focused on like civil rights cases, which is interesting. And this is up in New York. He's from the North. He became president in 1881 through 85.
But basically, that Civil Service Commission, though, Dan, like you were saying, a lot of people didn't like that, though, because it made that people had to take like tests, right, for government jobs. And that angered a lot of congressmen. He wasn't nominated for a second term because of that. Like that, the one thing that he kind of does also cost him a chance at re-election because they don't nominate him because so many congressmen are angry about that. I mean, basically, he's getting away with their like payoffs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
They couldn't just give jobs to their friends. They still could, but I guess not as easily.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, because he had the mugwumps.
Yeah.
Because the mugwumps were upset with him.
Right. I mean, there's a few interesting facts about him that, kind of like your typical, hey, did you know? he was kind of like Obama was. He was definitely accused of potentially not being a natural born citizen because his father lived in Ireland and Canada before he was born. So his parents like moved around a lot. So there's some people when he became president, they're like, should this guy even be president? He was actually named after the doctor that delivered him, Mr. Chester Abel. What else? Dad was a priest. There's a couple other ones. He's obviously known for his facial hair, right?
Yeah, he said he was known to be very good looking.
Really?
His stylish clothes had that whisker type, whisker sideburn type of look that you would see.
Okay.
He's a big guy too. He's over 6 feet tall, apparently. That's why I was seeing all the websites kept on saying one of the tallest presidents. Why not?
It's always a claim to fame when you're.
Yeah, I know. I was going to say
that you're tall.
Yeah, that's your claim. You're one of the tallest guys who's ever president. Oh, great. That's like all you're known for. I guess you could be put on this forgettable presidency list.
They said that he had no vice president for his entire 4-year term. I did not know that before I started.
That happened a couple times, though. There was several times when there was no vice president for a while.
That seems like kind of risky, though, isn't it?
Well,
it wasn't required.
It wasn't required. It was before the secession was put in place.
Yeah. He also had a personal. He was the first president to have a personal valet. Apparently, he was like really into his clothes, and some historians argue that he had close to 80 pairs of pants. I don't know, but again, fairly forgettable when it comes to actual office stuff. All right, who else do we have during this time period, late 1800s?
We got Garfield. But once again, his claim to fame is getting shot. So he couldn't do much in his presidency, so he kind of gets forgotten.
True. Cool beard, though. Basically, that guy could have totally lived. If that happened he'd be out of the hospital the next day.
Yeah, he would have been fine. Yeah. And he said he could have been a good president, but no one really knows. That's why it's forgettable, basically, because he got shot.
Because they try to get the bullet out and just mess him up even more.
Yeah, they kept on like sticking their like dirty fingers into like trying to see the projectile, the bullet. It's like, what are you doing? All right, what else we got, guys? Anybody else that pops up?
No, actually, Rutherford B. Hayes.
Rutherford B. Hayes. They say he's forgotten, right? when you look at them, you think of like end of Reconstruction, you think of Compromise of 1877, but then besides that, like that's all I got for Rutherford B. Hayes. It's not like you spend time teaching Rutherford B. Hayes. I would say he probably fits here. No, what do you guys think?
Well, he didn't really do anything to stop like the Southern leaders, like who tried to take a vote away from like African Americans. Like he didn't do anything. He just kind of like.
Well, but that was part of the deal, wasn't it? Like
but he also like could have spoke up. Like he also barely won, right? Wasn't like really one of the closest.
It was a special congressional committee that actually declared him president. Like he never won the presidency.
Yeah, actually, he was electoral college by one vote, and that made him president. Yeah, his supporters made a deal to put him in. Yeah,
and more than likely that the other Tilden, who he ran against, more than likely should have won. When we look back, when historians look back at that, because as you said, kind of a fraudulent aspect that he got his presidency from. Rather fraud. It was a great nickname.
Yeah.
And he wasn't very fun either. He didn't drink, didn't smoke, didn't gamble.
Yeah, wasn't his wife his wife was a big supporter of the temperance movement, right?
Yeah. Yep. And once again, coming after a big personality like Grant makes you kind of Congress kind of want to put that personality back in the bottle.
Interesting. And interesting how you said bottle and the whole idea of like he eliminated booze from the White House.
You see we did that?
Like that?
Yeah, it's good.
That's why all his kids get 5s on the A-push test, Dan.
Nice.
Yeah,
nice.
all of them.
All of them. Isn't your average like your average is like a 5.6, right?
It's a 6, absolutely.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome.
I got my AP shirt today. That was very exciting. I was a reader for AP, and I got my shirt.
Oh, they actually send you a shirt?
They finally sent me a shirt. I could get a shirt or a tote bag, and I opted for the shirt.
We'll also give you. Should we give him a history teacher talking podcast shirt?
We should. We should give you some of our merch. We have it
available. Are they available at our store, Pete? Just say that they are.
They are not. There's no store, but we do have some. If anyone wants them, email us. We'll send them over to you.
Yeah, we'll just send it. You can just have one. Yeah.
Merch is the best.
But what else? His wife was actually known as Lemonade Lucy. Did you guys hear that one?
Yeah.
Because she was so anti alcohol.
Well, she used to serve lemonade at the White House instead of alcohol. So these people from they would come over from other countries, or like a high-ranking congressman would come to the White House. They expect like bourbon, whiskey, scotch, whatever, and they're getting just lemonade. So we don't drink at the White House, and they're like, wait, what? So it's interesting, and it's obviously that led down the line eventually to prohibition. It was one of the beginning of that well, not the beginning, but a major factor in that temperance movement.
Yeah, I would say that.
For prohibition.
All right, who else we had from this from his neighbors in time?
I mean, really, the next one we talk about, I mean, possibly could be Taft. I mean, McKinley, you can argue. But McKinley, he fought the Spanish-American War, so I wouldn't really classify him there.
Yeah, I wouldn't classify that. I mean, he's
the reason we have Teddy, so I feel like that's his claim to fame, too.
Well, they said most of the websites that they did include, if they did include McKinley on it, said that his biggest claim to fame was that he was assassinated. That brought in Teddy Roosevelt, which basically he's not a forgettable president. Like he's the beginning of that more intense individual, that more correct, charismatic individual, like Dan was talking about before.
Well, you guys want
to McKinley had a huge political life. Yeah, huge political life.
Oh yeah, but McKinley's also claim to fame too is the only president who didn't push for he didn't push for the war. He didn't ask Congress for declaration of war. Congress kind of did it themselves, which is pretty crazy when you think about it. All the stuff that's been happening today, and
he did win re-election, McKinley.
Absolutely, because he won a war.
Yeah.
Going a little forward, I mean, you guys want to get to the 20s? I mean, we could go to the. I mean, unless.
Well, I think one that I saw on a lot of the list was Buchanan.
Really?
Things like that. I mean, well, forgettable as far as he didn't do much.
As in he was terrible. I mean,
yeah, well, that's how terrible. He's usually the one on the list. What, the worst president of all time?
Yeah, he's
usually
number one.
He's always the worst president. Yeah, I mean,
he's always one, and Johnson's always number two usually.
Yeah, he's always there because he thought about the best action was no action when it came to the Civil War. Well, the beginning of the Civil War, right when the states succeeded. He's like, you can't do that, but I'm going to do nothing to stop you. So they didn't really, he was just a very poor leader. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I would say forgettable, but yeah, I agree with everything said. Dan, what do you think?
I mean, absolutely. Forgettable implies we don't remember who he is and what he does, but we remember what he does because he didn't do anything. So it's
I think it's more forgettable along the lines of just let's forget about this guy even existed. He doesn't deserve that title. Well, he was a president, but he's not presidential as we know it today.
And then
you guys want to get to Harding and Coolidge? I mean, Harding and Coolidge. Historically, I would say I know who they are, but does an average American know anything about Coolidge or Harding?
The funny part about Coolidge is that Coolidge would be so proud of the fact that he was forgotten,
True.
Implying that he didn't do anything. So that's what he wanted to do. Let the business, let the economy take care of itself. Government shouldn't do anything. No one should even know my name, and he'd be very proud of the fact that he's a forgotten president.
That is true. Wasn't he the silent Cal when someone bet somebody that they could say he could say more than 2 words or something like that, and his answer was "you lose."
Yeah, I did hear that story.
And if you whenever I teach about Coolidge, I mean, he was popular, like you said, Dan, for pretty much doing nothing. Let's minimize the government interference as much as possible.
Well, he even that famous where he was the with the quote, right? The business of America's business.
Yes.
That's Coolidge, right?
That's was. Coolidge. Well, there was all 3 of them. I mean, throughout.
Yeah, he was taking. He was just following that whole idea.
Yeah,
but that's more than the 20s. Yeah.
And Harding's more famous for his scandals, both his sexual exploits and his actual scandals like Teapot Dome. But like I said, he was chosen because he was kind of a nobody.
The Ohio gang.
And he was chosen. And he was chosen because he looked like a president, not because he was very smart. I think he himself even said he was one of the most least qualified individuals ever to take office.
He's going to bring that. They said he said he was going to bring the nation back to normalcy, but in other words, he really didn't do anything. And basically, I mean, talk about bringing back to normalcy. I mean, I guess because he's following World War I, but I mean, he's following a very progressive president. So what in Woodrow Wilson. So what are we talking about with regards to bringing it back to normalcy? What time is he talking about?
Well, he was having a good time himself. He had a whole bunch of affairs, like Dan was saying.
Yes, he wrote erotic poetry to his girlfriend.
That's why they think that his wife might have poisoned him, right? They think his wife poisoned him because he was having all these affairs.
He nicknamed his genitalia and all that stuff too. So
yes, there was a name.
We went from just now we're just ripping Harding apart. And I was just
poor.
And it's funny too because
you're worse than Buchanan.
And that's why students don't forget who he is. They're like, oh yeah, he's the guy who named his junk Jerry. So
that's the one.
And that's usually on the AP test. So
exactly, that's
how you get a 6.
And what name did?
Draw an artist rendition of it.
Oh man. I mean, obviously he's known in history for the Teapot Dome scandal, right? I mean that, and the fact that he was never really. they couldn't really pinpoint anything at him and frame him for anything with these political scandals because he just died, literally just randomly died, as odd as that sounds. And a lot of historians believe that there might have been some form of legal ramifications against him and his politicians who were extremely corrupt. But he had died of this like quick heart attack. The same was something with poisoning. Like you said, Tom, potentially his wife.
That's a rumor. I think, it's one of those things that's going to be hard to prove one way or the other now. But
I want to say, I think he kind of exhumed his body too. Actually, I want to say
Coolidge or Harding?
Harding to see if he was poisoned.
Really?
I think so. I'm not entirely sure on that, but like it's.
I mean, Warren, Harding, Coolidge, Hoover, like those guys kind of go together. Going back to Coolidge, I kind of forgot to mention that before. There's two interesting things. One, that he had a mechanical horse that he would ride for exercise. Coolidge. I don't know if you guys knew that. He had this like mechanical horse saddle installed in the White House, and basically he referred to this as the Thunderbolt. And he spoke about this often in the press, and that was his exercise. He would ride this mechanical bull. Some of these lists that I look at for forgotten presidents have Herbert Hoover, but I would argue.
I was going to say that too. He's on that a lot, but I think he's a very well-known.
Absolutely.
You don't teach the Great Depression without teaching Herbert Hoover.
Yeah. So by no means would I say that he is forgotten. Talk about more modern presidents that are like somewhat forgotten. One of the lists that's here was Truman, which I would disagree with because I mean, any form of Cold War conversation starts off with Truman, but he might fall into the whole thing that Dan, you said of like following a charismatic known leader, because let's face it, Harry Truman was no FDR.
But Truman got a bad rap after the fact. I think he gets a better rap. More modern day historians tend to like.
Yeah,
Truman
we did a whole podcast on him.
A lot more.
I like him.
I think he's considered one of the like top 6, top 7 presidents now.
Mm-hmm.
For what he actually had to do, like put the world back together after World War II.
I like him. More modern guys that like, would you say Jimmy Carter?
I was just going to say that. I remember showing students the picture of all the presidents that were alive, and they had no clue who Jimmy Carter was. And then when I said Jimmy Carter, a lot of them didn't even know that. They're like, that guy was president.
Oh,
I think that's more of a teacher. I think that's more of a modern, modern American is American. We don't want to forget anything bad that happens. I mean, Jimmy Carter gets a bum rap because he tried to make our principles actually apply to our policy. And
he told people to turn down the thermostats, right? So like that, they didn't like that. Like, I'm cranking it up.
It's basically everything we should be like. We don't want to hear. He told us, which was his fatal flaw.
He wound up winning Nobel Peace Prizes since then, right? Didn't he win like some Nobel Prizes?
Yeah, he's one. I think he's one of the 4 presidents who won a Nobel Peace Prize. Well, in office or not office.
So I don't know if he's forgettable, but I think Dan is right. Yeah, he kind of not really doesn't get the credit maybe that he deserves as much.
Us Americans, we don't like thinking about the bad things, especially recently. Like we want to move forward and think positively. And that's the great thing about being an American, right? We never look in the past. It's always towards the future.
And was a charismatic. I think Reagan was charismatic. Whether you like Reagan or hate Reagan, Reagan was a very charismatic individual. So having him after him kind of overshadows, a lot of what Carter was. Yeah.
I mean, and you think of Carter, but then his predecessor Ford, I would think, would be more forgettable than Carter would be.
Good point.
Minus Nixon, minus the whole Nixon pardon. What else did Ford do? Fall down a lot, basically.
Yeah, he fell down. Yeah. Well, he created Saturday Night Live.
That's true.
Wasn't he the first president that they mocked on Saturday Night Live, and that was like the big thing. One of the first presidents.
The great Chevy Chase.
Yeah, just falling down. That's what he had to do.
So there was a poll conducted in 2009 across different American universities where they showed pictures to university students of different presidents and random people, not just presidents, but like people amongst them was presidents, to see who they would recognize. And 62% of college students in this poll in 2009 did not recognize who Gerald Ford was. 62% had no idea who the guy was when they showed him the picture. Isn't that crazy?
I mean, yes, but I can see that. I mean, again, like you talk about, he's not really talked about that much. Think about when you teach, that's in US too, right? So it's mostly older students. In Jersey here, that's like junior year, right? Mm-hmm. And it's towards the end of the year for the most part, right? Would you agree, Dan?
Yep. And you're rushing through it.
Yeah, no, Ford's like
you're going to mention. You're going to talk about Watergate. You're going to talk about Watergate. You're going to talk about Ford, and then it's just going to be he kind of just he pardoned Nixon, and then it's time to watch a movie, or something like that. Like so,
wow,
it just.
Tom, you're really not making yourself seem good here. I mean, I don't show.
I'm not saying I'm watching a movie.
Crunch time of AP exams. I don't show movies. What are you talking about?
I'm not. Hey, my AP scores were phenomenal this year. Okay, not Mr. Grizz levels, but nice.
I believe it was because the social studies leadership was so strong. That's why.
That must have been it. That must have been
Yeah.
That must have been it. But I
All
mean,
those sixes.
fun fact about Ford though is 2 different assassins tried to kill him in the span of 17 days,
Yeah.
and they were both women as well.
Yeah. That was one of our podcasts, Dan. Thanks for listening. That was one of our old podcasts.
Yeah, of course.
Presidential assassination attempts. It's available in the archive. Check it out.
Was the pretzel in there from George W. Bush too?
There was. I mentioned the pretzel.
There was? You mentioned the pretzel? Excellent.
Yeah. You have to mention the pretzel.
Shoes.
Go.
Yeah, well, we talk about forgotten presidents as well. What about George H. Bush?
Yeah, well.
Oh, I like H.
I think.
Well, because you think about it too. Like, once again, he's sandwiched in between 2 big personalities.
Yeah.
True.
He's a one-term president. Like, he ends the Cold War, not Reagan, but Reagan gets all the credit for it.
Yeah. Well, I think his legacy is going to be the couple of things. Well, throwing up on the Japanese prime minister, right? That's what he's known for. The Gulf War and read my lips, no new taxes. He went from having such a huge approval rating, right, to just tanking.
Well, he also didn't know. They said he wasn't in touch with the people because he was considered so wealthy. But I read his biography, and I mean, he was something else. Like, if you guys really look into his life, there's no denying that this guy was. But again, it's one of those, like, is he known for being a president or versus some of the other stuff that he would be known for? I mean, also, if you live in Texas, you would know him a lot more than if you live in New Jersey.
But he's also one of those last, like, Northeastern Republicans, like, around. Like, he was that last kind of, like, what we consider, like, old school traditional Republicans. And before it went, more towards the right with the, Christian coalitions and, the religious right, he kind of believed in that, monetary fiscal policy, like socially he wasn't that conservative. And then kind of this Republican Party went so much right after his administration where he was not even recognized as Republican anymore for the most part.
True. So I guess, unless you guys have somebody else, I mean, I don't really have any other ones, but I kind of want to, who do you think might become forgotten? This is kind of one of those, like, what is?
Well, I think a lot of the ones we talked about are probably going to continue to be less and less
significant,
well-known or significant, as time goes on. But as far as, like, modern ones, like, I don't know, who's to say? Like, I mean, I agree. Like, I don't think, like, Obama's never going to be a forgotten president just because of, being the first African-American president, everything that comes with that historical, event and everything.
Yeah.
It's the significance of it. I don't, whether you like him or hate him, Trump is not going to be a forgotten president. So that's just not going to happen either. So, it's just interesting to see what happens. It'd be interesting to see because it kind of, if it fits what Dan was talking about, and I agree with that, these after these strong personalities, the next guy, Biden right now, he's like him or dislike him. He's not Trump with that personality. So, history will tell, but it'll be interesting.
Possibly Clinton. I mean, minus the scandals. Because, like, if you look at like Trump, Obama, there's giant paradigm shifts with those guys. They're like historical moments, like 9/11, the first African American president. Trump is Trump, obviously. I mean, and then as Tom pointed out, like, Biden, like, who knows who's after him? He can get like, sandwiched in as being like another boring old white guy. He can be forgotten.
Yeah, I think history kind of tells, like, it's as time goes on, that's when we'll find out who else gets kind of left in the curtails.
But I think we're as teachers, as history teachers, we have a certain almost responsibility here because obviously history's growing, right? And until they start really coming up with, like, U.S. History 3, we have to really speed through a lot of things in our curriculum, right? And you're going to highlight the Andrew Jackson, much more than you're going to highlight Van Buren, right? You're going to highlight FDR much more. I mean, actually Truman is probably going to be highlighted. You know what I mean? But, like, see where I'm going with this? Like, we're almost as teachers and kind of almost like with the restrictions that are put on us more or less by, curriculum standards or whatever it may be. We're kind of the ones that are, almost responsible of determining which presidents, or not us personally, but I guess curriculum, right? And textbooks are kind of responsible for dictating which presidents are going to be remembered and which ones are going to be forgotten.
But even if you look at something like the AP curriculum, Pete, it's like kind of like getting away from that entirely. All the presidents.
It's all
more about, like, all thematic, all those giant paradigm shifts. And it's going to be interesting too to see, like, the romantic, feelings of our, grandparents, our parents about, like, Reagan, about, Kennedy and Johnson and Nixon, all like when they eventually pass on, like, are we going to have that same kind of romantic feelings about like Obama and Trump or Biden even? Because like when we talk about Reagan, you think he's the greatest thing in the world. But when we look at the historical aspect of it, you're like, oh, like, okay, he did a lot, but I don't think he's that.
There's some blemishes there, absolutely.
Yeah. We don't think he as great as our parents think he is.
Yeah.
You always got to look back. Wasn't like, I mean, it's a good thing to close on, but like you said, even Lincoln wasn't even well liked until he was like assassinated.
Yeah.
Oh,
imagine Lincoln went through with his Reconstruction plan. I mean, this guy might not have been on the penny, guys.
Yeah, it would have changed things. Or
no, everyone's second term is always worse.
Right. Anyway, I mean, I think that was a pretty good introduction to some forgotten presidents, and obviously
a little all over the place, but that's okay.
But that's how we roll.
That's how
that's the authenticity of this.
There you go.
So, awesome stuff, Dan. Thank you so much for joining us today. That was awesome.
No problem. I hope we get invited for a comic book conversation one day. I'd like that. So
we'll do. Everybody else, guys, thank you so much for tuning in once more. I hope everyone has an amazing week, and we will see you guys next week. Enjoy.
Stay safe, everybody.
I hope everyone enjoyed our podcast, and if you would like to email us, you can do so at historyteacherspodcast@gmail.com.